Good afternoon and welcome to the June edition of Conversations with the Dean. I'm Penny Bishop, Dean of Boston University's Wheelock College of Education and Human Development, and I'm delighted to have you all with us. This series gives us a chance to learn from BU Wheelock colleagues and guests as we explore timely challenges in education. We usually examine topics through the lens of our guide star and our commitment to transforming the systems that impact learning and development. Today, we get to discuss the very human need to live a life of purpose and meaning, and how career pivots can play a role in that. I'm really excited to be joined by three people who bring professional expertise and personal stories to this important topic. So I'm going to give you a few quick bios, and then we'll dive into this afternoon's conversation. Dr. Bobby Bowie is a senior lecturer at Boston University Wheelock College of Education and Human Development. Dr. Bowie has over 20 years of experience teaching and practicing psychology in a variety of academic and clinical settings with diverse populations. His interests include greater access to high quality and affordable psychotherapy for people adversely affected by persistent poverty or inequality, improving higher education in prisons, and enhancing the supervision experience of counselors in training. I'm also joined today by Mike Condon. Mike played collegiate hockey at Princeton University, where he honed the discipline and resilience that propelled him into a professional career that included playing with the Montreal Canadiens, Pittsburgh Penguins, and Ottawa Senators. His journey also included valuable time in the AHL and international competition with Team USA at the 2016 IIHF World Championship. Off the ice, Mike pursued his passion for mental performance and psychology at BU Wheelock, earning a master's degree in counseling. With the launch of his own consulting company, Condon Performance Consulting, Mike is creating a new model of support for athletes, one that integrates the mental, emotional, and physical components of sustained success. His approach is rooted in lived experience, in academic insight, and a deep understanding of what it takes to thrive in competitive environments. I'm also joined today by Matthew Smith, often known as Coach Smitty. Coach Smitty's been coaching hockey for over 2 decades. He's helped many athletes over that time span enjoy the sport they love while improving on ice skills, their on-ice skills. You can tell I'm not a hockey player, and helping them become a better human being during the process. Coach Smitty created all-in hockey and all-in mentality because of his passion for helping others. The true mission behind All In is to help others figure out what they love to do and create a process to help them achieve their full potential. Like Mike, he is also a graduate of BU Wheelock's counseling program. So welcome, Bobby, Mike, and Smitty. It's great to have you here with me today. Thank you again for making time to join us. To our audience, we really encourage you to join the conversation. I'm sure that today's conversation will spur on many, many questions and comments. And so we encourage you to put those in the Q&A box, and I'll be sure to integrate them as we go. So to get started, I'd love to start with you, Bobby, and get a sense of why you brought this idea forward in the first place. To our audience, I'll say that typically our process, we have this sort of year-long schedule of how we're going to do the conversations with the dean, and then when things arise, sometimes we'll do a special edition if there's something particularly timely. Unlike that, Bobby brought this forward to me, like this is a thing we should do. Bobby, tell us the story of why you brought it forward.
Yeah, selfishly, I just like getting together with our alumni, and especially these two guys who I've stayed in touch with since they've graduated. So that's, the personal. But more so, why I think this topic is important, as I spoke about in our promotion video about the statistic that when I first learned about it, it stayed with me. And that is that only 25% of Americans are fully engaged and passionate in the work that they do in their careers. And when I first learned that, I was kind of shocked, but it also stayed with me because I was thinking, like, what aren't we doing right? Right? As Americans, we spend so much time working, and work occupies such a significant part of our lives. And I was thinking, so many Americans are disconnected from their work, right? And it made me think of definitely right away of our students. And one of the things I really appreciate about our students, and Mike and Matthew fall under this, is that by the time they arrive in our program, they know why they're here. They
Mm.
have a strong sense of purpose. They know what they want to accomplish. They know the impact they want to make. That's in their essays, that's in their interviews. And so my motivation for us getting together and having this conversation with Mike and Matthew is I wanted to talk about and also learn about how people find their path to meaningful work. How do people become a part of this 25%? What are they doing? And how can we help others, also find their own path? And Penny, I'm glad that you're leading this because I know you are not a stranger to this. And for those of you that follow BU Wheelock's Instagram page, if you go back to November 24th, there's an interview with Penny and where she's being interviewed about why she, came to become dean at Wheelock. And I want you to watch that because just in that video, I love when we capture moments like this where someone is just speaking about their job and clearly in Penny's description, her tone and her energy, she's landed where she needs to be, where she wants to be. And Penny, I know you know the value of being deeply engaged in one's work. You get to show up every day as yourself, and that makes one be able to be more productive, but also to do the rich work. So that's why I'm excited I was excited to bring this to you and to have this conversation.
Thanks so much, Bobby. I appreciate that and that you brought it to me. So let's get started. Yeah.
So I want us to really think about these are just conversations. I mean, I'm going to throw out questions. I think people are going to also throw out questions. But um, Mike and Matthew, I just want to kind of get an understanding of what inspired you to make this career pivot. I know from your backgrounds, I read your essays and I've known you as people, you were both in careers that you were already making a difference. Mike, when I read your recommendation letters, the coaches that you were working with at Northeastern were saying you were impacting the lives of those um, team members at the hockey in hockey. And Matthew, you had a whole career of lengthy career, but also a career of service, in firefighting and also with your own hockey club. And so, why make this pivot, right? Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start it off, Smitty, if you like. Why make this change? I really enjoyed coaching. I really enjoyed X's and O's and the tactics and all that. But the thing that I really enjoyed the most was having those conversations kind of at eye level of like, hey, what's going on? Because as a coach, like you really just see the kids show up and play and you see an outcome or their performance. And they went about it in a strange way of, trying to understand the player from how they were performing. When in reality, it's like if we want the player to perform the way they wanted to, it was like it's that connection or like what's going on? How you doing? And when I would ask guys, I would say like, "Hey, how you doing?" And they'd be like, "Good." It's almost like a reflex. And
Mhm.
then I would pause again. I'd be like, "How are you doing?" And then they would take a big inhale because all of us, we all have so much to say, and in certain environments, we may not feel comfortable enough to reveal that. And that is the thing that I believe is what actually gets in the way of doing something the way that we want to do it. So, but it's also hard when you're a coach too, because you have to hold them accountable. So I didn't want to hold anyone accountable anymore. I wanted to work with them. I wanted to create a relationship of trust. And I started looking around and fortunate enough, there was a program in Boston that offered just what I was looking for. And um, it's been one of the best things that I've ever done. So I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, for me to make this change at right around 44 years old was obviously a little different. When I got out of the military, I had about a 10-year career in sales and was chasing money and was never really happy at the end of every day. And that kind of I remember my father, he was a firefighter, and I remember he had time to do things he loved on the side. And for me at that time, it was more coaching, right? I wanted to be the head coach at my alma mater, St. Mary's, where I am the head coach now. And I remember one day I was sitting around and I was actually coaching different hockey camps for different owners. And my wife, who's my accountability partner and everything, she's the reason why I wrote the email to Bobby Yenderby, which we can talk about later. But it was more. you should be the one doing this. She kind of always said to me, she's like, the athletes and the players love you. And so I just started a business out of nowhere and sold out the camp the first year. And I had a different style of camp. I saw there was a need for the mental side of the game, right? Which we all knew the most under-exercised muscle in a lot of these athletes is the brain. So I incorporated this program. It was physical fitness. We talked about nutrition, and I kind of just made up this mental performance all-in hockey thing on my own, these 6 steps, and I taught it to the kids every summer. And then I realized I was like, I really love this side of it. I actually loved it more than being on the ice. I saw myself making an impact with some of these kids, and I didn't have any training or any schooling on it. And I had some VA benefits still left over to use for college. And I always wanted to go to BU. I wanted to play hockey there. I'm still a fan. I love Boston University. It's in graduating like huge in my heart. It was a big moment for me. So I think just working with those athletes and seeing if there was a need for it and how much I loved it. And that was what basically that was the nudge that I needed to put that application in with BU. So for me, it's just about helping.
Yeah, so I thank you for sharing that. I mean, I see there's passion, there's this sense of purpose of wanting to go back, but can you speak more also maybe to the realities of returning to school after working and obviously going back to school means probably giving up income and also and knowing that you can take exams or write papers, and how did you get over those kind of mental obstacles or actual practical obstacles? Yeah.
How do we go with those obstacles? Let's see. I would just say that something in my kind of like my gut or my heart was telling me that this was kind of like the way that I really wanted to go. I really enjoyed coaching, but there was something kind of calling to me about the program. Like I knew about the program for like 2 years. And it almost took me that amount of time to realize that this is the thing that I actually really wanted to do. It's hard though because as everyone gets older, more things come up. Life gets complicated. I had 2 young children. Money is a factor. Spouse is working. When are you going to be around? And it's almost like the logical part of our mind is going to point out all of the things of how you can't do it. And we need to bring awareness to that. That's very important. But there's also other forces inside of us that speak to us too. And I finally had the courage or the bravery to kind of lean into that and to just say, you know what, let's take a shot. Because whenever I've done that in my life, I've been rewarded in one way or another. So it's kind of a leap of faith, so to speak. You kind of have an idea of what undergrad is, and like, oh, I got to jump into that, and like, I hope I don't have to take statistics again. And all that logic and all that memories coming in, and it's just like, okay, bring awareness to that and be like, what do you really want to do? It's 2 years. And as I get older too, I realize that time moves faster, unfortunately. So those are kind of the big metrics in my decision. It was just that, it's never going to be right. It's never going to be truly perfect and fit the way you want, but it is doable. It just kind of takes a leap of faith.
Yeah, so we have 5 kids, and they're all teenagers now. So the first step was talking to my wife about how busy I'm going to be, and I was already busy. And I had just gotten the head coaching job at St. Mary's right around the same time that I got into BU, which is kind of crazy. So I'm starting 2 brand new things. The greatest thing about being a firefighter, which I do like that job, because we do help people, but I can't say that I have the passion for that from what I do now as a mental performance coach. But I had to get the commitment from her and like really let her, she had to understand how many hours it was going to be between the internships and in-person class. And then I had to really, I'm not a big fan of driving into Boston. And then I had to really think about like, I'm going to be driving into Boston a lot and then the swaps with the guys at the firehouse, and that was a big one. So I have a few guys that I swap with when I was an assistant coach for hockey, and then I knew that I was going to work a lot of weekends paying back those swaps, especially in the summertime when we're in school. So I was going to be that was like the trade-off. Hey, you do these swaps for me, and I'll work weekends for you in the summer. So there was a lot to think about, and I was nervous, kind of like nervous before playing a big game, going back to school at 43, 44 years old when I actually went back. And that's nerve-wracking because you're more on the other side of life, right? Like halfway through life at that point in time. And to go back to school again, I didn't know if I was going to be the oldest person, which I was, and how everyone in the room was going to receive me. It was there was a lot of nerves going into it, but I believe what I teach at All In was like that commitment. As long as you're committed to it and you have a plan and you're organized, which I really am, then you can make it all happen. And I can tell you it wasn't easy, but it all ended up working out. And that's when you take a leap of faith, you have to trust in the process. And that's what I teach the athletes is just like trust your process. And when you build that process and you follow through on that plan, that was the aha moment once I was in, is everything just seemed to work out. The timing of the classes um and just how excited I was to learn again more than anything and really learn about something that I wanted to do, which was the difference between my undergrad when I really didn't. I was just kind of like checking the box going to college. I was actually learning something. And BU Wheelock did an amazing job in bringing that out for the students.
Matthew, you mentioned earlier that you were already a BU hockey fan, and so maybe the decision was a little bit clearer for you. But there are a lot of counseling programs in the greater Boston area, and several here, even in BU. What led you to choose this particular program at Wheelock?
I think it was the combination of the mental health and the concentration in sports psych and then the counseling background that the program offers. And I saw there was a lot of I could have just got certified in mental performance in an online program, like you said, right? But if I'm gonna do something, I go all in. So like seriously. So for me, it was like, and then you research, this is one of the best programs in the country that offers that dual, right? That concentration in sports psychology with the mental health counseling. So, and then it was obviously a lot about this is BU. This is where you wanted to go to undergrad, which didn't happen for you. I mean, I loved that I graduated from Norwich and, that was a great part of my life, but this was just, it was that, right? It was what the program offered, what I had read about it, and the fact that it was BU. It was really important that it was BU at the end of
Hmm.
the day.
Hmm. Mike, how about you? What about you and your choice and what that process was like?
Yeah, it was very very similar to Smitty's. I think both of us we knew a lot about performance and athletics before we went into it, and however, I feel like, there's experiential learning and then there's academic learning, and it's like we had the experiential learning. It's like we kind of, I at least wanted to know at least what the studies and all the scholars say. And also that other point too, and I think the one that helps me the most is the counseling side, because when I got there, it's like learning how to sit across from somebody. Are there wrong things to say? Yeah, yeah, kind of, but it's just learning of where those things could possibly go and what you're actually doing and actually how you help people when you sit across from them. And it was kind of funny to see that transformation of like, I remember like Smitty and I and all of everybody in our grade in the first year was like, we want to learn like the interventions as they're called. Like, what are the specific things we do with them? Because we all believe like that's how we help people. And by going to this program, it was like you are just helping by being in front of them, being non-judgmental, holding them in unconditional positive regard, and just giving them a little bit of shelter from their day, that 1 hour that most people don't get. And that to me kind of just gave me the confidence to be like, you don't need to have all these tricks and crazy trademark things. Be a person, be authentic, show up in front of them, and just coupling what we knew with for sport. And then obviously the sport program's phenomenal, and it was important to learn those things too. But the coupling of the two, the mental health, the counseling, and I think the other point too is that a lot of programs may do that in 3 years that are across the country, but BU is in 2 years, which made it a little bit more palpable to be like, all right, it's 2 years, it's a little bit more condensed, but I'd rather be in it for a shorter duration than a longer duration.
Hmm. Hmm. That's
Yeah,
helpful.
and to add to that real quick was the internships that BU provides through this program, the
Mm-hmm.
dual internships. So we got an internship on the mental health side and an internship on the sports psychology side. And not every program offered that, that I witnessed. And that led me to the job that I have now at Middlesex School. And it was actually through the mental health internship at Riser and Tread when they had me getting hours at Middlesex School. And then the director there of the counseling program, we connected. she wanted a male on staff, and she brought me in, and I'm working there now. So
Mhm.
thanks to BU, because that would have never even been a thing if it wasn't for the internships at BU,
Yeah.
which is really awesome.
That is, that's where the learning occurs, right? It's that connection between theory and practice, and then living it out, and then being able to unpack what happened and go back and forth about that, and talk about the contrast between what you are learning and what you might be seeing. It's such a powerful interaction. Yeah. Bobby, you look like you have something you want to say.
Oh, I think
No?
it's
Well, good. I have a question for you then. So, Bobby, you work really closely. You work closely with faculty and staff and students across the college. And I'd love to hear your perspective on how we might make the transition smoother for individuals once they've decided to apply. So, Mike and Matthew, for example, they sort of did that process of figuring out where they were going to apply and how they were going to fit this enormous shift into their lives. What is the experience of applying like? And yeah, tell us a little bit more about that from where you sit.
Well, I think, Penny, I'm going to say we do a great job with this. I think we have a great faculty who review applications, but also a great staff that runs our admissions office that makes this, this process as painless as possible for an applicant. But along the way, even that process, I think there could be setbacks. And I know both for Mike and Matthew, I met them through these setbacks, and I would like them to talk about that because it shows. I want to highlight what we do at Wheelock, in providing students with these kind of resources and support and time. Mike or Matthew, if you can kind of talk about your application process, and then I can share also on my end what it looked like when you guys applied. Yeah.
Yeah, like as I previously said, it's like I knew about the program for about 2 years, and I was kind of just, I remember the one year went by, and I looked at the deadline, and I missed it, and I was like, oh, well, maybe next year. Life got in the way. You have kids, you're working, and all of a sudden, I was just like, well, I wonder when the spring deadline was again, and I'm not sure what it is. I think it was like May 15th or something, and I checked on it, and it was or January. I can't recall. See, that's why I got in trouble in the first place. I think I was like 2 weeks late, and in my head I said like, "Oh shucks, like I missed it again." But something in part of me just said, just kind of like shoot your shot, shoot an email. You're gonna get a no, maybe, possibly. And I sent that email, and I think I heard back from like 3 or 4 administrators. It was like, "You missed the deadline. Sorry. You missed the deadline. Sorry. You missed the deadline. Sorry." And I think I emailed you specifically, Bobby, and then I think it was you at least gave me the time to like speak or to connect, and then that at least got me on the back end of the selection process, or maybe to be interviewed later, and then after the interview, the wait list, and then after the wait list, it was like, we can get you into the counseling program. We'll see how you do there, and then maybe you could transfer to sport. And then I'm not sure what ordained that, what power that powers that be. But then I got full admission to the sport program, everything that I was looking for, and it was kind of a fun, silly experience to be applying late, but still having it work out. So that was that was a fun time to say the least.
Yeah. I'm gonna
Is
let
that how
Matthew.
you,
Yeah,
sorry.
go. Go ahead. Good. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, is that how you recall it? I think that's how I recall it.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
close. I mean,
Yeah.
the only thing I want to highlight there is that you missed the deadline, but you really wanted to pursue this, and I think as one is trying to pivot and make these big changes, there could be a lot of obstacles and things that set you back, and you push forward, and I appreciated that, and I want people who are listening today to understand that it isn't always going to be a smooth process, and it may seem at times that doors are being closed to you, but if you really love something, you just push and then push, and then the door's going to open. And I want Matthew to share because I think his story also highlights that, and it also highlights, I think, not just me, but all the faculty and staff at Wheelock that will open doors, for students and applicants.
So you can see I'm glowing right now because Bobby Bowie is a forever name in our household, and I think all my kids, especially my wife, know how important he is in my life. And this is a man that, and I'll explain this story. So when I applied to BU, and this is a book that I took out, this is my goal book, and I started writing on March 16th, 2023. I wrote down that I received a degree in mental health counseling and sports psychology from Boston University. That was after I applied. And I wrote every day for 165 days, which is pretty crazy when you look at this book. I wrote that happened in my life when I teach athletes about writing goals and believing. But I was driving in the car with Christy and I got the email that I didn't get in. And I was so depressed and upset because I had gotten the approval from the VA to go to school and the VA was going to pay for it at BU, right? So that was a big thing. I got approved for BU and I'm like, how could this happen? And I was honestly being a baby and she called me out on it. And that's why we need to have a partner in our life that calls us out on our stuff. She called me Mr. All In, you big baby. Why don't you take your amazing writing skills and do something about it? And I said, wow, all right. I just got called out by my partner. So I went home and I wrote an email to the director, Bobby, and I wrote a pretty amazing email. And he responded within 2 hours. And he said, maybe we did miss your application. Who knows? Like, I convinced him to at least give me an interview. And I got my suit and tie on for the Zoom, and we had the interview. And Bobby said to me, I want to invite you into this program. I think you're going to be great. And he told me all the reasons why he think I would be a great addition to the program. But he said, I have some bad news. I only have a spot in the mental health counseling side. Do you still want to do it? And I said, yeah, of course I do. And the funniest thing is this is what most people don't know. I still wrote down in my book every day that I got into the sports psych and graduated with the sports psych. And he ended up calling me in July. And that's when I stopped writing the goal to let me know that a seat opened up in the sports psych side as well, which was like, you want to call that a coincidence, a synchronicity, or you want to just call it a deep belief that something's going to happen. But this is a real story of me writing that down, and then it ended up happening for me. So there's so many things going on there, but the big thing is just Bobby being the awesome human being that he is to give me an opportunity to at least interview. And I'm forever grateful because I'm filling my cup every day because of you, Bobby, because you gave me that chance. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. I appreciate you sharing that. I don't want to take all the credit for it. I think we do. I want to speak to our community and how faculty in our program we review applications to kind of demystify that. You guys went through a little bit of a different process, but when we are reading your applications, like especially when I'm reading applications specifically for you two, we know what we're looking for. We've been doing this for a long time, and I know you're thinking like, am I going to get in? But what you don't see is on our side how excited we are when we're reading and how impressed we are when we're reading your applications, and we are also thinking about like we want this student to come. When we make an offer, we want you to come. We think you're going to be a great part of this community. And I remember reading your essays and your letter recommendations. They were so aligned about what you were saying and what people were saying about you, about how you want to make a difference. And I remember, Mike, when you were in the program and I emailed out to advanced students to write to incoming students, what advice would you give them? And you sent back this in your own words in a different way. What you also wrote in your essay about be the resource that you didn't have when you were going through things, for others. And that's always been, and even today, that shows up in who you are. And so when we're reading these essays and interviewing you, we are also excited. And so people always think there's an application process and it's just kind of looking at grades or and I guess that type of data. But at Wheelock, we're really looking at the whole person. We really want you to come into this community, be a part of it, and help build it, help enrich it. And so, and even coming back today and giving your time as alumni, you guys both were so open to doing this. I think that's the type of community that we have here, and we know, or at least when I was reading your application and interviewing, I was like, they're going to be great here. And so I want to kind of, for those who are thinking about applying and thinking like it's such a heavy process, right? Writing essays, getting letters of recommendation, ordering transcripts. Please know that on this side at Wheelock, we are excited to be reviewing your applications and helping you find purpose. Yeah.
I love the way you put that, Bobby. And I think it is helpful, regardless of what folks might be thinking of, to imagine the other side of it as very human.
Yeah.
It actually makes things feel much more accessible, doesn't it? To be reminded that they're people.
And
on
I
the other
want to say just specifically with Matthew's great email to me was he really opened up and he said that, I'm a veteran and he talked about all the stuff he's done. And at first I was just like, he's a veteran. He has already served our country in a really incredible way. So therefore, I'm not gonna. This is something that I really need to look at closely. I owe this to everyone who's done that service for our country. And then he just wrote more about why he wanted to be here. Why it was important for him to be here. And I said, yeah, I'm gonna. This is a no-brainer. You're gonna bring such rich experience, as a firefighter, as a veteran, all these things into the classroom. That's gonna elevate and broaden and deepen the conversations that we have in the classroom. So again, that's from my side. So Matthew's thinking like, why did he reply so fast? Why did he offer me a seat? And it's because of what you did and what you presented and what you've done in your life that has shown us that you're going to be an asset to this field and a great community member at Wheelock.
I'm going to turn to the audience for a moment because we have a few questions that are starting to pop up. One, Bobby, is for you, and maybe you could put this information in the chat simply. It's Allison is a career coach, and she'd love to know where you learned the stat about the 25%. So if you do have that information or you could find it, throwing that in the chat, I think would be really helpful. To Matthew and Mike, there's a lot of interest in your sports internships, and so we'd love to hear where those were and what the experience was like.
Yeah, it's funny because like in your first year before you even completed a class, like you're assigned a team like the first day, and you're like, I don't know anything, and they're like, well, you're going. So it's like you kind of learn on the fly. But I started off with a hockey academy called Boston Hockey Academy, and I went up there and I worked with the coaches actually. There was a couple other people there too that were working with the individual teams, but I went off the bat and I started actually trying to help coaches with their performance and their coaching. And then I also got the chance to go work with Wellesley College tennis and Wellesley College volleyball, which was really for me stepping out of my comfort zone of being in male athletics and specifically ice hockey. And I've never played tennis and I've never played volleyball. So we talk about growth and getting out of that comfort zone. It was like the principle is the same. What you're trying to learn is how you translate that to how they will understand it. In my second year, I was able to do a mental health practicum at an internship at a place called Riser and Tread, the same as Smitty. And then I was also able to work with my alma mater, my high school, Belmont Hill School hockey team, which was really great, and also MIT baseball. So in that time, it was like it's co-ed, it's male sports and women's sports, it's different teams, different dynamics, and that just gives you the confidence after 2 years that you can walk into any environment and figure it out. So that was my placement experience.
Thanks, Mike. How about you, Matthew?
Yeah, for me, I want to give a shout out to Anna Ward, who was also my supervisor at BU. And I live in Beverly, Mass, and Endicott College was one of the internship sites. And Anna placed me there and then allowed me to stay there a second year, knowing how busy I was with everything that I was doing. That's a mile, like 2 miles from my house. So that was really huge. On top of that, Endicott is a high performing Division III school. They take their sports very seriously. Like the baseball team just competed for a national title. Like they've gone to the World Series 4 years in a row and they were playing the final game. I actually know the athletic director there. Both of his kids went to All In Hockey, Brian Wiley. So that was kind of, I already had a contact there. He did a great job in introducing me to all the coaches. And that was just an amazing experience because the school is so sports focused. I was constantly full. And the coaches would just recommend athletes to come to me. So I would literally have 8 to 10 sessions on the one day that I was there. I was getting a lot of hours, which was really awesome. And through that experience, like you just grow over the 2 years. I remember Anna saying that to me. Like I was so worried about what to do early on, and she said, just sit with them. And then obviously, you grow by the end of the second year, you're like, wow, I am a completely different counselor than I was in my first week and how nervous I was, right? Just sitting and having a conversation. So I was pretty lucky to get Endicott. And then I also got Riser and Tread, like Mike, on the mental health side. And that's what led me to Middlesex School where I now work. And I started 1 day a week there this year. They added a second day because I was so full, and they're going to add a third day. So I'm going to be working 3 days there and then 2 days at the fire department with the hope that eventually I can walk away from the fire department and just do this full time. And I know Bobby wants that for me. But yeah, the internships were amazing. It's where
Mhm.
you learned everything. I mean,
Mhm.
you can learn so much in the classroom, but it's the internships that really are the best part of that program at BU. Obviously, all the knowledge and the writing the papers that as you grow as a student, but you really grow through the internships, and that's huge that BU does that for the students.
Well, Matthew, you just slightly answered one of our audience members' questions around how you adjust to jumping right into those internships, having minimal experience with sports and mental performance counseling. And so, Mike, how would you answer that? It sounds like Matthew had that concern. He talked to Anna about it. It was partly about just, sitting with them. How did that play out for you?
Yeah, it was kind of just having the humility and the expectation of like you're not going to walk in there and be on your first day and be this complete refined product. The team knows that you're in school and that you're learning, and they gave me that grace. But it's like anything, it's just iterations. It's in hockey we say reps, or sports we say reps, but another way is just iterations. How many iterations is it going to take for you to feel comfortable? And it was after 3 or 4 times, it was just like, okay, now you know the team. Now you have that rapport. You're going to practice, you're showing up. And that was the other thing that we learned too, is that like if you want to be more comfortable around the team, like be around the team. And with that, the human nature just comes out of it. So I think that first year, that first couple of 3 months is learning that like it's not one specific like activity or intervention. It's just being there and being a human that doesn't want anything from the other person. And then all of a sudden that kind of creates a force of attraction to be like, all right, maybe this person could help me, or maybe I do have something to say. And that's how kind of I walked into it. But I think Smitty and I also had a couple of iterations too, because we were used to walking into new locker rooms, having to meet 50 people and just having that comfort as well. But it's just that I don't want to reduce it to reps or iterations, but it was just you you can learn so much in a book, but until you get out into the field, it's completely different, and it's the most rewarding part, in my opinion.
Mhm. When I made the decision to go back to graduate school, I was the only frame of reference I had was undergraduate. And I was really nervous. Will I be in these really large classes? What will it be like? Will I have to take stats, whatever it is, right? And I'm wondering, what were your expectations? And then how did it meet your expectations? And what might have surprised you?
Ooh, my expectations. Let's see here. Yeah, I was really worried about math. I was like, oh no, math again, math, math, math. So I think when I got into the program, I didn't want to let them know that early that I was kind of shying away from math. And like, it's okay. There's one math course. It's more research based. You'll be okay. But yeah, we have that undergrad experience, and then in an undergrad, it's like they're always kind of like on top of you with deadlines, and there's not a lot of leniency, and it's maybe since there's more people in the class, there's less relationship. But when you get there, the funny thing I always say is that it's a counseling program, so everyone is very attuned to listening and hearing what you're saying. And I remember like in the first couple months, I was like, no excuses. Like you got to get it done. Like you got to show up. You can't miss. You got to do all that. But some things came up in my life that I had to deal with, and I remember speaking with Bobby, and he was just like, "Yeah, you're an adult." And I was like, "Oh, I am? Oh, okay, all right, all right. Like I am an adult. I have a mortgage.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah, okay, I am. Yeah." So it was kind of like that, almost like growing up too, that you are a professional now, and they treat you that way, which is something that maybe you don't experience in undergrad. In undergrad, you're still kind of like a kid, but when in the master's program, all of the teachers really appreciated what everyone was going through, even if you don't have kids. I knew so many other students who were working at Trader Joe's or just trying to, get hours and make money between classes. We were all going through that, and that was the other cool thing, is just the community of it. Like we would all roll into the night class, like, and everyone has a story. Everyone's going through it, but through all that, we're like, oh, okay, at least we're not alone, and maybe we can laugh at it while we're in class. So that was kind of the biggest thing, the humanity, the connection, and also it's they trust you to do the work because that's why you're there, and that gives you a lot of confidence as well.
Mhm. Mhm. How about you, Matthew?
I honestly had no idea what to expect, but I was pleased after getting into the program. I didn't know if it was going to be more like undergrad where you're kind of sitting, taking notes and studying for exams, and there really weren't any exams at all. It was mostly just papers. And then I thought a lot of the professors, especially on the sports side, and especially Bobby, Anna, Edson, and J Math, I thought did a great job of allowing conversations to happen within the classroom where we had a great cohort. That's what they call the group, right? There was 20 of us on the sports side, and we had a great cohort, and everyone brought something different to the table, and we were able to learn from each other, which is really awesome. And all the professors did a great job in more facilitating, right? Obviously teaching us, but there was a lot of facilitating that went on. And I remember Bobby sometimes would just sit there and not say anything. And then he would come in with those amazing words of wisdom. Like, honestly, his class was just that when I got to have him for my prac on the mental health side, that was, and I would go home and tell my wife about all the time how amazing he was and the way he would just say one little thing and when the way we learned from him that way. He was just a really good facilitator. And I think that's what I learned at that a master's program is to teach us more, not just sitting there teaching you definitions and terms like they're obviously introducing all that, but allowing the students, the adults in the room, to learn from each other and to talk about their experiences. And when you have a great cohort like we did, we were able to learn from a lot of different people from different backgrounds, which I think was really awesome. That was the
Mm.
most, I didn't expect that, right? And to get that, that was pretty rewarding. It made it all worth it for sure.
Very cool.
Um,
These, go ahead, Bobby.
no, go ahead, Penny. You good?
I was just going to lament that our time is going faster than I'd like it to. So, Bobby, if you wanted to have a last question or comment before we start to wrap up, please. Otherwise, I'll go to the next.
Yeah. You can ask if you want to ask the next question, or I can I ask that? Should I ask
Have,
that next
you
question?
bet.
Or
Go for it. Whatever you'd like.
gosh, there's two, so I'm gonna choose. I'm gonna choose. We're going back to the topic, right? Being fully engaged in your work, and you both went back to school to find career paths that you were more connected to. Did you find that here? And maybe you can talk about an experience or something, how it shows up in your work today.
Find like what we found in the program and how it showed up in our
Yeah, what you're doing
yeah, oh,
today,
yeah,
like did it give you what you needed to do the work that you find so that you're hoping, yeah, that would be.
yeah. I think in sports too, like especially the way that I like to help people. It's like a lot of it is about the two big terms we always hear, meaning and purpose. It's like your why, your means to an end, or like why are you doing this? And it's not a challenging question; it's a curious question. And when I get meaning out of it when you see someone in that initial first session and you see where they are, and then over the course of however long your relationship is, in an ideal world, at the very least, you can sense and see progress. And at the very least, at the end of when I work with a client, it's the thank you, or it's not even the verbal thank you, just the seeing that you can see people's faces change. You can see if their shoulders are dropped or high or they're standing and that alone is kind of like meets the goal that I had of being the resource that I wish I had. And I definitely worked with people when I played, but to be that person for somebody, not to tell them what to do, not to fix or cure, but just to be there and sit with them along with it. Um, that's just the most rewarding thing that I do, and I'm very excited every day when I wake up to be able to do that. And I absolutely it met the need that I was looking to find in my vocation in the future, this program, and it definitely shows up every day in my work, every day. Even this is still it's such a blessing and such an opportunity that I was so grateful for and still am.
Matthew, anything to add?
Yeah, yeah. So I don't like driving in traffic. I'll just say that. And there's more traffic in Mass than there's ever been. I think we've all seen that grow over the last 5 years. So Beverly to Concord where I work now, Middlesex School, where I get to do this work. And then I obviously get to do it with my own private practice with all the mentality. But driving to work, it takes me about an hour and 10 minutes to get there every day and get home. And it was never once a chore. Like literally, I was so happy to drive there every day. And that would be like a deterrent for most, right? Like, do I wish Middlesex was closer to Beverly? Yes. But every time I went to work this year to work for that prep school, knowing that I was making an impact there for the students. But on top of that was just how happy I was to be there. And purpose is the first step in all in mentality. I believe in living out your values. I think more athletes need to do that, right? They need to understand what their values are and why they play. And I believe in this like intrinsic purpose. Like, why are you doing what you're doing that matters, right? We're so chasing material things in this country right now. And it's not, and you're not finding happiness that way, right? So like when you have this deep meaning, this intrinsic purpose, and I read it to all my athletes, I obviously, when we start sessions, I have them write out their intrinsic purpose. I teach them like this is something you need to do because it's going to fill your cup. You need to know why you're doing what you're doing. And it's not just to get to the pros or to be rich or to do this, right? Like, why do you do what you do every day? Because it's not always easy, right? Part of life is like some of our happiest moments are our hardest moments, even when we're suffering a little bit, right? We're going through a little pain. And I think people forget that. But at the end of the day, when you have that deep purpose and why you do what you do, and that's what makes that ride to Middlesex so easy, because I know I'm living out my purpose now for the first time in my life at 45 years old in regards to work, right?
Mhm. Well, thank you so much. That is, I'm sure that people are feeling their cup is quite full at the moment. I know mine is. This has been a great conversation and certainly is reminding me of my purpose. And also, I hope that it's been really helpful to others who might be wondering about what's next for them. So thank you, Bobby and Mike and Matthew, for joining me today and for your willingness to be so candid with us all and for your stories and your wisdom. To our audience, I want to invite you to learn more about the incredible work happening here. That they are folks that are focused on mental performance and sports psychology and counseling. You can find more information on the slide. Check out the website or follow us on social media and stay connected. And also, I want to also say that we're taking a summer break from Conversations with the Dean. So July and August will be off, and I hope that you're all taking a summer break as well. But we look forward to seeing you back in September as we kick off another year of great topics. Have a great afternoon and thank you.